I think this is the longest I've kept quiet.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Restart India and the show we've put together for you. And I'm Lakshmi Pratury. And on behalf of everyone in Restart India, I thank you for joining us today. So I just want to look at where are we today? We are today, we've had Ganesh Puja, we have Onam, and we have a lot of festivities around us. And we are also going through one of the toughest times humanity has faced. And at the same time, it's important for us to see the positive in it. Lord Ganesha is known as the remover of obstacles, and Onam is synonymous with renewal and energy. And if we put all these things together, there is only one way for us to be, and that is to be with as much positivity as possible. And the series of talks that we have put together in Restart India is toward small and nano and medium enterprises, because they are the heart and soul of the industry across the globe, especially in India. And the idea here is that can we discuss what are the different obstacles being faced by them? What are the different opportunities that are there? What are the different industries, insights we can provide, so we can look at what are some new business opportunities, etc. We have, for example, a fruit seller, a vegetable seller, or someone who has a little cake shop. I mean, all these small businesses are under a lot of stress right now. So what we wanted to do is bring you some people who can give insight into what they're doing and how we can build ecosystems of small businesses around them that can bring some value. I love the idea of small because I believe that small is beautiful. It all starts with a small seed. When you put the seed becomes a plant, the plant becomes a tree, and ultimately that gives us the fruits, etc. In the same way, the small and medium businesses or owners are the glue or the seed that give rise to many industries, many situations that can bear fruit, that can give us sustenance, that can give us energy. So, with a special homage to the small, medium businesses, nano entrepreneurs, we put this series together for you. With this, I would like to introduce you to my co host, Tina Suzanne George. She's the Impact Director for Restart India, along with her teammates. And it's that team that's bringing together all the programs for Restart India. Uh, Tina is a next gen of the Muthoot leaders, and she's a chartered accountant by qualification. And he's worked at the likes of global accounting firms uh, before coming to Muthoot Fincorp as an associate vice president of finance. And the thing that's great about Tina is that she has the discipline that finance bring, as well as the heart and the caring that the Muthoot Fincorp group is known for. So everything that's done here is with a lot of care, lot of support for what we want to be for the small and medium entrepreneurs. With that, Tina, on to you.
Thanks, Lakshmi. That was very moving, that introduction. And thanks to the Inc. team for an unconditional commitment to this collaboration. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our second live event series. I would like to start by just sharing how Restart India came about. When the lockdown hit, we started reaching out to multiple small businesses just as a personal gesture, to just see how they were doing, just to support them, guide them. Because this is a segment that we work with. Like all our customers, they are predominantly nano, micro, small businesses. And during that time, we realized that these small businesses are highly adaptive to change. They're very agile. You give them, you just like give them an idea, they'll quickly take it on, and then they're the ones who started adapting to the new normal when we were still figuring out what that was. And we realized that as an institution that's working with so many small businesses, aside from just being a financial partner, where else can we intervene to help them? What they need is an ecosystem that will point them in the right direction. And that's how Restart India was born. So aside from just financial services, we wanted to bring in all of these sectors like technology, healthcare, agriculture, marketing, because we wanted to be able to put all these minds together and be able to assist this sector and answer the real questions that are faced by these small business owners. And to meet that end, we've been able to bring together a formidable mentor panel and a very talented response team from across all of these sectors. And this is just the start of what Restart India is, what Restart India hopes to achieve. But the vision right now is to be a one-stop advisory and guidance platform for small businesses, someone they can turn to with any question that they have.
Thank you, Tina. As you are saying, that these are just baby steps, the initial steps that we are taking to be able to serve our small business community, and hopefully we'll do a lot more. We have an amazing mentor panel who are giving the best gift they can to us, which is their time, their expertise, their insight. So we thought that today we'll have our focus on small businesses that make up the food sector in our country. And what are the challenges they're facing? What is the supply chain? What is the possibility for sustainability? And what are the market fluctuations that are coming their way? In what way can we prepare for the future? So to enable in this conversation, we have two amazing people who are our mentors, Kavitha, Mantha, and Narendra Pasipati. So I've known both of them for a long time. Kavitha is a owner and chief curator of Sage Sustainable Living, a company focused on providing access to natural and sustainable lifestyles. She's had an international career, worked all over the world in different functions, and now her love and her passion and her business is all focused on bringing amazing food and food-related elements. And Sage is, has many in-house product lines. They have a Sage Farm Cafe, Thrive by Sage, which is in Banjara Hills in Hyderabad. And it is one of the first farm-to-table cafes in India. And I have been there even before the cafe opened, and I was just amazed by the variety, the tasty food that Kavitha prepares with very, very healthy ingredients. Usually healthy and tasty don't go hand in hand, but not so in her case. And both the cafes specialize in making all their dishes from scratch using the highest quality seasonal ingredients, and also while bringing back style cooking in iron skillets. And also Sage Farm Cafe is located in Jubilee Hills, Hyderabad. They recently won the Restaurant of the Year award, beating all hotels and cafes in Twin Cities, in spite of just being a couple years old. And she was also awarded the Restaurant of the Year award for a novel approach to food. And also more than half the population in India, depends on agriculture for their livelihood. So what we thought is we'll have Kavitha speak a little bit about what has changed in them after the march specifically. Kavitha, you prepare, as I said, some of the most delicious food, and you also own a farm where you grow all the vegetables, etc. So you are actually experiencing it all the way from farm to table. So what has changed since March, specifically in the farm to food supply chain? Do you think these changes are permanent? And welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lakshmi, and thank you, Tina. Really lovely initiative you both have started, and they're delighted to do part in this. I think I want to actually pick from your introduction, Lakshmi. You said it's Ganesha, it's time of renewal, and really, this has been a really tough time across the board for many. But there are a lot of positives that have come out of it. So rather than focusing on all the challenges that came, I do want to start by saying that a lot of Tina, you mentioned how this sector is able to adapt the quickest, but a lot of the adaptation that has actually come through is a function of something fundamentally that was actually in play much before. Obviously, the biggest issue with food is supply chain. It always has been. It's always been the biggest challenge outside of obviously natural calamities, etc. And that was dramatically interrupted during this period. But some really interesting things came out because there are so many people like us who have sort of left our corporate careers and have sort of realized that the future really lies in being closer to nature, being more connected, being more sustainable. And so one of the interesting things that came out was even though the first couple of weeks were definitely harrowing, it was very challenging to even know whether I remember I had friends who were calling me and saying, hey, keep this much for me and keep this much for me. And we were desperately trying to, to tell all our customers, you have to ration. We can't overdo it. We cannot get you to just stock up because we need to make sure everybody has access to everything. And we are doing our very best to ensure that we can restock as quickly as we can. But there were days with fresh produce, which became very, very challenging, where we didn't know whether there was going to be access to villages, etc. But as some of the initial pain points of the lockdown sort of released, a very interesting phenomena occurred, which was that small group of farmers were being led by some entrepreneurial person who was able to then make connections at a community level. So suddenly you saw that while they actually managed to avoid the whole middleman perspective, because the markets were not operational, that was no longer an option. And so through this necessity of the fact that this is short-term produce, produce can sit for maximum 3 days before it goes out to the customer, came the incredible opportunity of people getting together and saying, hey, if we form a quorum, maybe we can actually go and fulfill one section's needs for vegetables and fruits, and that will make us sustainable. And it will end up being an incredible boon for communities as well, who didn't want to go out and shop, did not want to leave the security of their four walls. So that was actually a very, very interesting phenomena that came out, Lakshmi. Something that was talked about during this time was supporting the farmers. Let's actually take these group of farmers under our wing, and let's say that, okay, you are our guys and you will supply to us. And that process has begun, and I do hope to a large extent that a lot of it will continue post-COVID, because it builds efficiencies at a whole lot of levels for the consumer as well as the producer.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. In some ways, we are going back to the way it was, the cooperatives, people coming together, really being there for each other. And it's really great to see that happening. So thanks, Kavitha, for that. Now, let me introduce Narendra Pasipati, the CEO and founder and the chief farmer of Nandu's Chicken. It's founded in 2016. Nandu's Chicken was born with the objective to provide great quality, fresh, antibiotic-free and branded chicken products to customers across India. It's currently the only hyperlocal omni-channel meat retail brand in India. The company follows an very, very interesting integrated business model. It's not just about doing one thing, but doing about very, very complementary things well. They have about 100%, they have 100% product traceability with the promise of safety and accountability. And remember, they've implemented all these things before COVID, before it was expected, etc. As a business practice, from the word get-go, they were about 100% traceability. Nandu's Chicken has grown and tasted success over years, and also leads the poultry operations of Nanda Group of Karnataka, UAE, and Oman. So Naren, in pre-COVID world used to travel a lot. He's a passionate environmentalist. He's also founded another venture, Insectify, a circular economy company, which we'll find out a lot about, which I don't want to say too much right now. I want him to talk about it. He's also an active angel investor and an avid badminton player, and also likes collecting cool cars. His hobbies include aero modeling, biking, and music. And I really want to say one thing about Narendra is that he's always ahead of the curve. As I said, their traceability was there way before it was necessitated, and now they are looking at things like Insectify that bring sustainability to farming way before anyone else. In fact, in the world, not just in India. So he's somebody who really thinks ahead and supports. Many of Inc. fellows have been at the receiving end of his generosity and their family philanthropy. So usually in our country, many people tend to avoid meat the moment something happens. So Narendra, I thought you should talk about, and there is a health concern. People start talking about, we need to know where the food is from, or is meat good or not, etc. So has the pandemic impacted the food sector dealing with meat and other animal products? And if so, how? And welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Thank you for such a humbling introduction. It's really a pleasure to be on the show with everybody else. So with regards to meat, 73% of Indians are non-vegetarian. We tend to think of India as a vegetarian country. Actually, it is not. Right? Yeah. So meat has always been part of our diets, and Sundays are festive because of meat. Right? There's biryani being cooked at home, and that's the highlight. The entire family congregates at the dining table. And I don't think, there's not a single housewife across the country who's not happy to receive those compliments on a Sunday lunch that she has prepared for the family. So meat's always integral to our, to our presence in India, right? So, beginning of COVID, we heard rumblings of an emerging pandemic in China. And our experience, actually, we track some of these things very closely because we're in the animal production industry. And in 2006 was the first time when we were exposed to bird flu. Okay, it didn't jump into humans; it came into the birds, and these are zoonotic viruses, and they get transmitted by wild birds which are migrating across continents. We had some experience dealing with that. And since then, we have like a preparedness plan in place in the company. We monitor the notifications from OIE, and we saw some of these being reported across the planet, the Wuhan going into some sort of a lockdown, etc. So we were hoping that this will again not translate back into the poor chicken, right? For some reason, everything comes back to chickens. Very funnily, right? So middle of February, we started seeing some videos on WhatsApp University talking about, corona emerging from chicken. The poor chicken had nothing to do with it. In fact, OIE and WHO very clearly said that there's absolutely no evidence at all. So for a very brief period, we saw the market take a beating. In fact, it was such a hard time for the entire poultry industry across the country because of, irresponsible videos made and thrown up on social media. We estimate the entire industry lost close to about 30,000 crores in a span of 30 days.
Wow.
Right? The industry is very large. It employs millions of farmers across the country. And almost all vegetable farmers today have residual income from poultry. So on the same land, they grow poultry as well. Right? So it was a very large impact. But come towards the end of March, the industry stepped up. We did a lot of awareness campaigns. Assured the customers that we didn't have nothing, the chicken has nothing to do with any of the emerging pandemic or whatever. and the consumer went right back to it. So, lockdown was announced, and we saw a resurgence of demand, and the demand was actually skyrocketing. And it was about clarifying, connecting with our customer base, and communicating with them, saying that it was absolutely fine, right? As a matter of fact, I think we have never seen wheat consumption grow so rapidly in the last 4 months that we have seen, ever. So in that sense, India loves to eat meat, and we are back in business.
Actually, this is something based on Kavitha, what you said, and Naren, that was. You shed some light on something that we didn't even know, that 73% of India's population consume meat, and that was eye-opening. Kavitha, Naren, this is a question to both of you. I'm curious to understand, in the first few days of the lockdown, consumers resorted to panic buying and hoarding essentials. Kavitha, you mentioned that they just wanted to stock up for themselves, and we know that this happened. But do you feel like the behavior's changed now? And it would be interesting to know from both of you, are the supply chains running smoothly now, especially for essential items? And just to add on, is there anything that we need to do to ensure that supply becomes more robust? Kavitha, first to you, and then we'll hear from Naren.
So there was definitely a lot of panic buying. Honestly, a large part of it was, especially sort of the kind of work that Sage does. There is a certain reputation, there is a certain goodwill that we carry, there's a certain authenticity of produce that we tend to have. And as a result, there was a concern that if our stocking runs low, people would need to go for products that they're usually not used to having in their household. So that was one of the reasons why with our customer base, we did see a lot of nervous buying. We kind of expected it, because obviously this was scary for us too, because at the beginning there was no guarantee that we could even operate. Even the understanding of what essentials are, and essentials will be allowed to operate without any issues. There was a lot of challenges in actually the system falling into place right at the beginning. We also were not entirely certain that we could assure the customer that, we're going to operate right through, come what may, we will be there, we will do our best. Right in the first couple of days, we didn't have that confidence to actually say that. But we knew very early on that we needed to make sure that people understand, and we're privileged that we work with a very, engaged and educated group of customers. They had to understand that it wasn't possible for one person to buy 50 liters of oil and keep it at home, because it just was not going to work. So we were able to tide through that first week or two with trying to calm people's nerves down, convince them that we were doing our best. And of course, supply was impacted dramatically, because interstate, remember, for a lot of this, unlike a huge conglomerate like Ratnadeep or something, which has owns almost entirely its supply chain, we rely a lot on interstate transfer vehicles. And that's exactly what small farmers do. Small farmers are not necessarily putting everything into one truck. They're sending us something at the back of a bus. Now the bus is not running, so that produce is not going to get to us. So it took definitely a couple of weeks to actually come out of that in terms of steadying the supply that we had. But I have to give credit that the panic buying actually died down pretty quickly. I know we heard some horrific stories from coming out of the US, etc. And I made a bit of a joke about it, because in the US they ran out of toilet papers. In India it was actually yeast. Yeast was the one thing that the stores didn't seem to have, because obviously everybody wanted to bake some bread while they were sitting at home. So, but I think that definitely went down pretty rapidly. Within the first 3-4 weeks, we saw almost a leveling off and a calming down. There was a second possible surge of a strict lockdown coming up. We saw a little bit of a surge, but again, we were able to control that. But I must say that that at no point did people feel that this was the way to go, that we just had to hold and stay on. So I would say things are pretty much normalized substantially on that front for us.
So, Naren, I know that you said initially people were still eating meat, but then now the demand's gone up so much. But do you think there's anything that we can do to ensure that supply remains constant, like that is more streamlined?
So, as Lakshmi was, mentioning in my introduction, so we are actually a completely integrated company, right? So everything from feed milling to broiler farm, breeding, hatcheries, growing the broiler chicken, slaughtering, retailing, everything is owned in one single company, right? Or within the group of companies. So in that sense, we had, our supply chain is a lot more mature, right? Our farmer network is in place. We have regular transports that are picking up the broilers from these designated farms and taking them to the processing plants. And then we have regularly scheduled, cold store enabled trucks which are bringing chicken back into the city, into our retail outlets, etc. So we didn't see a disruption in that sense of logistical disruption. We did not see. What we did see was some confusion at the government level regarding what was essential, what was permitted, what was allowed to operate or not, right? So we as a team jumped in very quickly and then took charge of the entire supply chain, as in getting the permissions and getting all our staff, all the passes and all of that. And within 4 days of the lockdown, we opened actually out of our 45 outlets, we opened 13 of them, right? Because there was some panic where some of our staff wanted to go back to their villages and etc. We had to communicate a lot to these folk. We house all of them. We provide housing and all of that. So we had to reassure them, and we stood by them, and they all came back with a vengeance to operate 13. And within the next 2 weeks, we were operating about 30 stores, and a week after that, we went to 43 full scale, right? So in that sense, our supply chain had other issues. We didn't have logistical issues, right?
Okay.
In a sense, it was we had some crazy incidents where farmers start transporting chicken through the villages, actually spread corona. So we had to reach out to the farmers because they would actually block these trucks. And typically what happened in small Indian villages was they actually barricaded the entire village off, right, as a security. It's a fantastic thing. I think they did a fabulous job. But so we had to reach out to the panchayats heads and talk to them and say, hey, this is a regular truck, this gets sanitized, and there's nothing to worry about it. We had to reassure them, and then the entire supply chain fell in place. So we didn't see a major disruption in the supply chain because we owned the entire supply chain, but we saw some disruption in operations, right? And also because there was only, slaughterhouse again was not allowed to be operated for some time to come. We had to reassure the local authorities and the local population that it's absolutely fine. It is part of life now. We have to deal with it. Right? So there was some amount of education to go. During that time, something very interesting happened to us, right? One of the things we saw happening was we didn't see a lot of people hoarding chicken, but they did want to store it. Not hold it, they wanted to store it, right? Very interestingly, there was one couple with a specially able child, and they reached out to us and shared that their child could only eat Nandu's chicken. And the child is actually fed through a pipe directly into the stomach, right? Yeah. And they had just relocated from abroad. The child had actually gotten used to this because we don't use any chemicals and stuff. Mm-hmm. So luckily, we always have some backup material in the factory where it is all frozen, right? So we saw a large-scale adoption of frozen chicken.
Yeah.
usually people will think that frozen is old, but actually it's a great form of preservation, especially if you are maintaining the cold chain. So we were able to kind of pull together the team. Somehow somebody got to the factory. We opened and prepared a box for the family, and then he showed up with a letter from the government saying that he could travel. And it was such a wonderful thing that the child that usually ate fresh was now able to safely eat frozen. So in that sense, we saw a large scale adoption of frozen chicken come into play.
Yeah.
Right. So some of the very interesting things that are coming out of this situation is people are learning to live.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal to see how we have been able to adjust and modify our behaviors.
Yeah. And also the pandemic has brought out, as you're saying, very unusual behavior also, right? Because we are all survivors at the end of the day. And maybe, Kavitha, you can take this in terms of, I think people have taken a lot to buying locally because there was a lot of issue of shipping, coming, and also question of trust, right? Like somebody may buy banana chips from the neighborhood auntie. I'm seeing in my complex actually a lot of women cooking and in the surrounding areas cooking and supplying and stuff. So there's a lot of local dependence that has started because of this, than buying something branded, etc. And now that we're unlocking and we're getting back to quote unquote whatever the new normal is there an opportunity to boost balance of local and global consumption? On one hand, it's wonderful to have the frozen option because that's a new discovery for a lot of the people. And on the other hand, there is a discovery of local foods also. So what can buyers and sellers do differently? Is there some new opportunities here? Kavitha, maybe you can take that. And how should we change our behaviors a little bit, even as sellers, even as buyers?
So I think one thing that definitely we saw across the board, and maybe this is definitely, I hope it's a lesson that we take away from this entire experience. I think the general slowing down did increase the level of empathy that people had and the patience that they had and their interest in engaging with what they were doing. And when you very clearly put down the fact that these are your only essential services and nothing else really matters because you are now going to live life for 6 weeks without anything other than just your essential, it does put a lot of things in perspective for people. So I know in the first week I had people calling me and saying, hey, do you store matcha? Or, hey, do you store truffle oil? And we're like, no, that's not what we do. That's not what we've ever done. And I'm never likely to do that. But I can tell you about this lovely Gangabail Kura that's growing in the back of my yard and what you can actually do with it. So I think there was a lot of openness to experimenting, trying something new. And something that happened with us for the first time. We struggled, as in farming you often do with your crop, and we were struggling with the basic greens like your spinach, etc. But we had a flourish of tree-based spinach. And suddenly we saw people were willing to actually experiment with this because there was such a dearth of fresh greens that you could actually add to your food. So people were just so open and willing to experiment. And once you start trying with something other than your spinach, you just realize that there are so many options in India and things that actually grow locally. My concern is definitely that this might be somewhat of a short-term lived tendency. But as happens with any kind of a phenomena, when a wave like this comes through, a lot of people get carried away half of the way, some of them another 25%, and then a few all the way to the end. So we do hope to see more conversions. We do hope to see people understanding that at the end of the day, that empathy that they showed to their neighborhood auntie who was trying to make money by frying her banana chips. The reality that she was working with the banana chips because that's what was being grown right then. And that's what made sense because that's what she had access to. That's what she could value add to. And as she value added to that, it actually meant that she could actually survive on something like that. And fundamentally, food, if you think about it as your essential, unless we choose seasonal, unless we choose local, unless we start to experiment and work with what is available in and around us, it's, you don't need a pandemic to actually explain it to you, but in the long run we actually cannot possibly make the food and the food chain and food supply sustainable.
Yeah. And I must say, for years, as long as I have known Kavitha, she's always been saying about the importance of seasonality, following the seasonality, instead of saying, I want the same vegetable all year long. We should eat whatever is available in that season. And it's something you really stand for, Kavitha. So thanks for saying that.
Lakshmi, there's an audience question. I think it will fit what Kavitha said. So, and this is a question that I'm sure a lot of people are asking. So this question is from Vipasha Tilak. And her question is conscious buying or conscious products meant only for the elite?
That's a very, very valid question. And I think this is where some of what happened during COVID would be a very interesting phenomena if we actually can take it forward. There are serious challenges with what we do. And over the last couple of decades, there's been a lot of misinformation that has been fed out to natural producers, which has led them down a path which has made it very challenging to have authentic, safe product. We talk about nutrition versus fitness, and I always have a challenge with this because it's, clean eating is not about just being able to eat broccoli. It's about being able to understand how the broccoli was grown and whether it's actually good for you after it goes into your system. Forget about the number of calories it carries. So as a result of it, the challenge, Vipasha, is definitely the fact that today a lot of the processes that are required, we are reverse engineering. And we're going back to the basics of what we used to do. Our grandparents don't know anything other than natural and organic raising of food. So sourcing of ethical produce, rearing of ethical produce has become a huge challenge because of the phenomena that we've gone through over the last couple of decades. And that includes stories around chicken that I'm sure Narendra can talk to, includes dairy, includes produce, pretty much across the grain. But my hope is that once the adoption rates increase, the access increase, once it's viable, very viable for farmers and producers to realize that you can do the right thing and still find a market for it and be paid the right amount for that. And that's very, very critical. Even within the pandemic, I had people they were getting 10 kilos of vegetables, a basket for 300 rupees, and they were like, hey, since we're buying 50, do you think we can negotiate for 250? And that doesn't work. You have to value what you're consuming. And this is where I again come back to the whole nutrition and fitness. It's not, unless we support the farmer and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to take you under my wing. And I know it's going to cost a little bit, but you doing the right thing is important for me in the long run. Once we can do that and convince them that there is a market for it, hopefully it might take another decade, but over this decade, once the system set back down again, we will get to a place where ethical sourcing and ethical living would not be just for the elite. But I'm not going to deny that currently a lot of it has become very expensive and exclusive because there is only a certain customer who's even willing to care for that story, and putting that out there and procuring it just has become a challenge from all perspectives.
I have a question for Naren, and before that, I just want to say that in fact, the elite has lost their way in the last few years. I think whoever we call the ordinary, they are actually the elite as far as I'm concerned, in terms of they know how to eat, they know what grows around them, they know how to go to the backyard, pick something and make something out of it. It's the elite who suddenly say, oh, I can't do without the imported avocado or something like that, and messed up our eating system instead of following seasonality. So I think there is a lot of learning to be done to go back to actually what our grandparents were doing. I think we'll all be fine if we just get back to that. And Naren, what I want to ask you is, one is, I'm saying we should really remember what they did 2 generations ago, and that was very sustainable. On the other hand, there are a lot of technologies, there are a lot of advances that have come now, to move ourselves into the future, there is a lot of practices we can adopt that were just beyond the reach of our forefathers, potentially, that we can adopt. And we talked about Insectify, we talked about some of the things that you're doing. The whole concept of circular economy, that basically nothing goes to waste, everything is used. You are really implementing it extremely well in Nandu's kitchen. So, in Nandu's chicken. So, do you mind talking a little bit about it, which makes it to our kitchen anyway? So, I'm just giving you a new brand name for your company. So, can you talk a little bit about the work that you're doing in the circular economy, Naren?
That's a wonderful question, Lakshmi. I think before I go there, I just wanted to take a minute and address that question regarding, good produce is always for the elite is equal to more expensive. That's actually a wrong equation, right? So that was one of the first things we wanted to break when we started Nandu's. And we went back to the drawing board and said, can we produce good quality meat without any chemicals? We're not organic, but we are chemical free, right? And organic has got a different definition to the whole thing. A lot of people don't understand what organic is. The organic meaning the entire supply chain has to be organic, the grain has to be organic, the soya has to be organic, the land should not have been tilled for 10 years, land has to be certified. Kavitha can talk about that in length. But so we were very cognizant of that fact. And we said, we won't shoot for organic, but we will shoot for chemical free at an affordable price that applies to the entire segment or the spectrum of society that is consuming chicken. That is our purpose. So it took us about 8 months to actually go back to the basics and question everything that was being done with regards to growing chicken. So simple cracks, simple discipline and good training and good selection of good farmers and training them and communicating the whole purpose of running a business brought about a great change in the farming community that works with us, right? Farmers inherently are very hardworking and the most underappreciated community in the world, anywhere on the planet.
Yeah,
right?
in the world probably, yeah.
So, they all want to do the right thing, but somebody has to guide them and show them the purpose of what they're doing and put it out to the consumers. So that's exactly what we did. We went back to our farmers who are growing chicken for us. We engaged them on an integration model business where we take up the entire business risk and they just, work with us to grow our chicken. So we went back, good biosecurity practices, good farming practices. We trained them on all of that. And out came, after 8 months of our experimentation, out came a product which was free of all chemicals. And we stand by that word even today. So to answer that question, a good product need not be expensive, right? The product that we offer at Nandu is free of all chemicals, and it's not significantly more expensive than what is sold in a regular chicken shop, where there's absolutely no traceability in terms of where the chicken comes from or how it has grown up. So that's what I wanted to say. It's a function of our discipline. It's a function of our commitment to doing the right thing that can actually make food viable at a good price for the entire society.
Right? It's also volume, right?
Yeah. And we've cracked that puzzle where we are producing, close to 500,000 chicken a month without use of any chemicals or any antibiotics, right? So it's possible to do, but you need a shift in the mindset to do the right thing, right? So that was what I wanted to add to Kavitha's answer. Then coming back to sustainability, we've always focused on farming in the right manner. We are very socially conscious regarding our carbon footprint due to our business on the planet. So we were very early on, we started adopting solar energy in all our breeding farms and in all our growing farms. Because of the nature of these farms being very remote and rural, there's no electricity. Okay, there's hardly any electricity. Rural electricity is quite difficult to come by. So we were using generators and burning a lot of fuel. So we wanted to address that. So we adopted solar. This was about 10 years ago. We were the first ones in the industry to go completely solar. So when I actually went back to the electricity board and surrendered our connection, that guy just fell off the seat. He's like, why would you come and, surrender your power connection? I said, I'm self-sufficient now. So we took that up, and we are so glad we did that. Hundreds of liters of diesel per year. Like for one single farm, we were consuming close to about 600 to 700 liters of diesel a month. And that came down to 40 liters a month, only under emergency situations where we don't have sun. India's got plenty of sun, right? So that was one of our sustainability initiatives. Then came biogas. We use chicken litter that emits methane. That's 20 plus times more harmful to the planet than carbon dioxide. So we captured all the methane from poultry litter, started producing biogas, and from biogas started producing electricity to run our farms. So that was our second initiative, right? So when I look back now and connect the dots, all of what we did with the right intention led us to what we are doing at Nandu's today, right? It was, our focus on sustainability. It cannot be business as usual anymore. That's what I keep telling everybody. If it is not in your farm, doesn't mean that it is not on the planet. It is there on the planet. I can't just throw away stuff outside my compound and expect it to disappear, right? Yeah. So we all have to feel responsible about that, and we have been responsible. And having done all of that, today we see that consumers come back and they want to align with a brand that stands for these principles, right?
Narendra, sorry, we have only like about 12 minutes or so. I want to make sure you talk about the Insectify, the thing you're doing.
Okay.
That really is the future.
Okay, brilliant. So as part of these sustainability initiatives, one of the things that we also looked at was how can we make poultry production even more sustainable than the initiatives that we were taking. And one of the things that we were doing is we use soya in production of the poultry feed. So poultry feed is generally composed of corn and soya. About 20% of all poultry feed is made from, the ingredient is soya. And soya is very heavy on the planet. It requires a lot of land to grow, a lot of water to grow. And 80% of all soya grown across the planet is actually used as feed for animal production, right? So that was a nagging question in my mind. And for about 5 years, I'd been researching how could we solve this in a sustainable manner. And, I read in an article somewhere that insects are a natural, there's emerging stories about insect farming, and got me very interesting. So insect farming is a circular economy business. Why I say circular economy? Because the insects are plentifully available in our environment. They will consume all the organic waste that we are producing, and they lay eggs, and that hatches into larvae, and the larvae will eat all of the organic matter that's produced by our urban cities, right? What are we doing with that today? We are restaurant waste, household waste. We're just throwing them into landfills. They leach into the ground, pollute the groundwater. So why not take all of that and grow these insects? I call them, wonderful nature's cleaning machines, vacuum cleaners, right? They're absolutely phenomenal to watch and, be with because they're so much full of life. It's so exciting to see them. So in 15 days, they put on close to about 600 times their body weight. Okay. Voracious eaters. And then what we do is just before pupation, we harvest them and we dry them up. And then we crush it. We extract insect oil as well as insect meal. And the insect meal will replace soya in the poultry feed. So our objective with Insectify is to rid a small Indian city in the next couple of years of all of its urban organic wet waste. Second is try and replace as much soya bean meal in poultry feed and fish meal that is used for making fish feed. So fish meal production is extremely dangerous and it's disastrous to our coastal fisheries, right? And everything is being fished out and everything is being dried and powdered and added into fish feed. So we will replace that. So that's the whole objective of Insectify, where we are, and as a matter of fact, we can produce in 1 acre of insect farming, we can produce 64 hectares of what can be produced using soya, using 99% less water.
Yeah. So Naren, actually somebody in the audience had asked a question on, what we can actually do with our waste. So I think you've given quite a detailed answer to that.
So just to add to that, I have a kamba at home. We don't throw anything out of my house. All of the kitchen waste goes into a kamba, compostable kamba. There's a company called Daily Dump, and they make these kambas. Right? Beautiful. All we have to do is put the organic wet waste in the kamba and just open the top a little bit, and nature will do the rest. They come and lay eggs; those will hatch, fall into the organic matter, and at the end of the day, you have a whole pot of insects that you can just throw it out into the garden, and whatever is left out from the organic matter is organic manure.
Yeah.
Great. So we are at the last 7 minutes of it. So I want to make sure I ask each of you, Kavitha and Naren, a wrap-up question in terms of, one of the things that's emerging, which Kavitha, you talked about at the beginning, is more collaborations, unusual collaborations and cooperatives. And because we are in a situation that no one knows how to move forward. It's not like there is somebody to learn from. We are all dealing with new situations. So maybe each of you can talk a little bit about what are the kind of collaborations that you think are happening in your areas and you would like to see. And since we are talking to all the small and medium entrepreneurs, what kind of collaboration should they think of having? So your thoughts on that would be really great.
Sure. My dream project, Lakshmi, which I think with COVID is probably closer to fruition. I think for me, the biggest problem is very clearly the fact that the difference in what is actually being produced versus what is being consumed. And that is something that really does have to be addressed. Hopefully through education, the consumer can get a little more conscious, but farming is an art. It's not a science. It will never be exact. So collaboration where, what I would love to see going forward is an exchange of sorts where producers come in as well as maybe communities come in. So you actually completely avoid the middleman. And they can connect with each other so that fresh produce can find a home for itself as quickly as it possibly can. And a part of that exchange is actually something where creative cooks like I can come in and figure out, okay, so this is what is left, this is what people don't want. It has exactly 3 more days to actually become productive in some way or the other. And use something, out of our little arsenal and produce the heck out of it and value-added products, and then have it accessible for a longer time. So whether that's by fermenting, pickling, solar drying, or any of those stuff. And if nothing else, as Naren referred to it, at least make sure that it goes back to a farm and gets composted and goes back to the soil in one way or the other. So trying to see that completion from source to selling it would be a really nice direction to move forward.
Yeah. Naren, I know you work with a lot of small farmers. So what are your insights into it?
I think one of the most interesting things that has come out of this pandemic situation is it has basically taught us how to quickly collaborate with the society at large, right? We have always collaborated with a lot of farmers. Today, there are close to about 250 farmers across South India who grow chicken for us. It's been an amazing collaboration with us. In fact, we have times when our farmers who are growing chicken spend half a day at our outlets and get to meet the customers who are actually consuming what they are growing. Right? It brings them closer. It values them. So we collaborate very closely with the farmers. One. Second, due to COVID, our collaboration with online marketplaces have actually accelerated enormously, right? Because they became our delivery partners and we became their only source of business because the restaurants were all now shut, right? Yes. So there was a very symbiotic relationship that emerged. Then collaboration with a lot of entrepreneurs. Like we work with another IoT company to IoT enable and monitor the insect farm.
Wow.
Right? All of the data. So we are breeding and we are producing close to about 3 million eggs a day. And the perfect environment for them to lay those eggs have to be created. And that was possible only because of our collaboration with a company that's doing IoT. Right? Mm-hmm. All of the humidity, temperature. So collaboration is happening all over. It is, no one industry is exempted from this or that, right? So we're always looking for collaboration. We are collaborating with the farmers. We are collaborating with, even the apartment communities. Now they want exclusive chicken outlets to be located in large apartment communities.
Yes. So, yeah.
So you don't have to actually go anywhere, and the chicken is right at the doorstep, which is completely, traceable. So it's been phenomenal. We have found great opportunities to collaborate during this time.
Great. I want to, first of all, thank both Kavitha and Naren for bringing. I just want to summarize two things that have come up. One is Kavitha talking about the difference between being healthy and being fit. It's health is a different path to take, and also the importance of seasonality. These were really, really very, very unique insights. And then Naren about, how to cater, the source. I mean, how to cater so that the source is known, and all the great work you're doing to do that really is commendable. I'd love for Tina to actually wrap up, and maybe Tina, you can talk for a minute or so about one of the most important things for the small entrepreneur is the financing piece of it. Maybe you can shed a little bit of light on that and then wrap up the session.
Yeah, thanks, Lakshmi. Just quickly, like our Honorable Finance Minister announced a lot of schemes that would help the sector, like for setting up agriculture infrastructure, marine and inland fisheries, for animal husbandry. Then even subsidies have been announced, like to ensure that stock would move from surplus markets to deficient markets, which is something that we've been talking about, like to ensure that the farmers get the right price for their product and at the right time. So these were some of the things that our Honorable Finance Minister announced. Aside from that, I must state that even the Reserve Bank emphasizes a lot on ensuring that support is given to this sector, like through banks. The banks have to compulsorily lend for, a portion of their credit with emphasis on agriculture. So, and that goes through multiple layers like banks, NBFCs, so that the loans reach the last mile consumer, and in this case, the farmers. So that was just like quickly wrapping up on what schemes are available for farmers and anyone in the agriculture sector. Just to close off, I'm still, on behalf of everyone at Inc. and Muthoot Fincorp and all of our mentors, we're inviting anyone who's running a small business to ask whatever questions you may have related to your business. Visit our website, www.restartindia.in, post your questions, and we'll be more than happy to get back to you. All right. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Thank you. Namaste.
Bye.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.